Welcome back to DevelopLex. Today, as typical, I would let our guest Luther Deaton introduce himself, but I do want to very broadly introduce Luther as one of the most sought after guests that we've had on DevelopLex. We have been, since we started this podcast a few years ago, we have been told over and over we need to have Luther Deaton on. Has made a profound impact on the city of Lexington, and is just very, very connected to a lot of our guests in more ways than just financially. But Luther's technical position is the chairman, president, and CEO of Central Bank. A lot of people know Central Bank around the Lexington area, but he has been involved in about everything under the sun as it relates to Central Kentucky over the span of his career and his life. So I'm going to let Luther, as customary, introduce himself, but thank you for coming on to DevelopLex.
Thank you.
We'll first roll off, where are you from?
I'm from Breathitt County.
Breathitt County.
Raised in a little place called Haddix, Kentucky. And I had 3 sisters and a wonderful mom and dad. And we grew up in a 4-room house. We had no bathroom, no running water, no heating and air conditioning. We had an outside toilet, and we got the water from our spring. And then we dug a well, I don't know, probably halfway through school. And no TV and no telephone. But we had a lot of love in that house, and my 3 sisters and I really got along good, and we still get along. Thank God they're all living. And my dad and mom was always taught us 2 things: to be honest and have integrity. And I started working in a cornfield when I was 7 years old, thinning corn. And then when I got older, I went to work for A&P. I'd go in Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3:30 in the morning, unload a truck, and then go to school and come back and go across the street to Dalton Standard Service Station. And everything closed down at 5. Then on Saturday, everything closed down at 5, and nothing was open on Sunday back then. So my life was good.
Okay, Breathitt County. Where in the state is Breathitt County?
It's up next to Hazard.
Okay. Gotcha. I've seen, when you're a little kid and you sit there and watch the school closures. I remember seeing Breathitt County on there, but I actually never knew where that was. It does seem like they were always out of school when it started snowing around Kentucky.
Well, if you drove those roads, you know why. The snow would never melt off.
Yeah, I'm sure. My brother-in-law's from Harlan. I think he would describe it the same way. Okay, so from Breathitt County, how did you make your way to Lexington?
Well, when you usually got out of high school, you did 2 things. You either went to Cincinnati, Dayton, Ohio, Chicago, or Michigan. That's where the work was. And I went to Middletown, Ohio. That's where my oldest sister lived, and she still lives there. And I got a job in a paper mill, and then worked for Veronica Manufacturing about a year or so, and got laid off. And then my brother-in-law, my middle sister, husband, worked in Louisville in a finance company. He said, well, come down here and we'll teach you this. So they did, and I worked up my way up in that company, and I had to travel a lot. So I worked there almost 10 years. And my wife said, if we're going to have kids, you got to get off the road. We was living here in Lexington then. So I went to all the banks here trying to get a job. Central offered me a job as a teller. So my wife said, what do you want me to do? She said, take it. And I think my salary then was like $7,400 a year. So I took it, and then the bank sent me to school, Louisiana State University, in banking school. And then I loved what I do. I become a lender. I really enjoyed helping people and see them grow. And then it all blossomed from there.
So let's date. I don't want to date you too badly, but so you became a teller in about what year?
1978, March of 28th.
Yeah, wow, 1978, and you've been at Central Bank since?
Yes, sir, 46 years.
Okay, so what is, we could really dive into a lot of things with that. I would first probably ask, what would you describe, or how would you describe what you do today if people asked you?
It's completely different when I started. The world's changed. Lending's changed, banking's changed, and you got to change with it. You got to adapt to change. And we've always been taught in our organization to adapt to change and take a change, and it's what we've done. But banking today is, I look at it the same as what I did when I came in. You build relationships with your customers, and that's with honest integrity, and you treat them like family. And once you build that relationship, it goes from there. Do you get disappointed sometimes? Yes. But back when I was growing up, the local banker, if you wanted a car, he'd say, go get a car. Here's your check. You and your dad come in and sign the papers. It's not like that anymore. So banking has really changed.
Yeah, a lot more of a handshake agreement maybe back in the day. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. And for those that don't know, what are some of the events maybe that changed that to what it is today?
One thing when Jimmy Carter went in, changed a lot of it, because he had a guy that run his campaign that he had a lot of overdrafts and stuff in banks, and they've changed that a lot. And then the Dodd-Frank Act changed. And some of it's good, some of it's really bad. What people don't think, it really hurts a consumer. When you have to do a lot of things, and the consumer don't understand that, but the reg says you have to do it. So you have to do those things. But we face it with, it's a challenge. We said, we're going to do it. We're going to make sure we educate our customer for it. And that's what we do. And we move on.
And what would your role today as chairman, CEO, president, what does that encapsulate at Central Bank? Well, with context too, we're sitting downtown right now. There's a lot of things around us that have the name of Central Bank on it. So it's obviously grown to be a very successful bank. I had my first checking account there when I was, I don't even know, 13, 15, whatever it was. When I was working at Outback Steakhouse, I would put my checks there. But incredibly successful bank. It's obviously grown a lot, and you've been a huge part of that. But so you've risen kind of to the top of Central Bank. What would you say today you're doing? Well,
I oversee the whole operation, but I couldn't be what I've done and what I am today with our 530 team members we have. And we got 28 locations throughout Lexington and surrounding counties in northern Kentucky and Louisville. But my board and my two owners, Joan and Jane Kincaid, gave me that opportunity in 1995. I had no idea I was going to be president of Central Bank and Trust Company. And they called me in one day and they said, what would your mom think if you'd be president of Central Bank? I said, well, I'm sure she'd be pleased. And they said, well, Joan and I have talked about this. We want you to lead this bank for us, and we want you to start now. And that was in January of 1995. And if it hadn't been from them, I wouldn't have been where I'm at today. And Jane passed away almost a little over 15 years ago. And Joan takes nothing out of this organization, not one penny. She takes director's fees and dividends, and that's all. And she cares about our communities, because I couldn't do, or our bank could not do what we do without her, because she's a giver and not a taker. And my success, I've got to give it all to her and my board and my 530 team members.
DevelopLex is sponsored by SV & Stone Commercial Real Estate, a full-service commercial real estate firm located in Lexington, Kentucky, affiliated with the SVN International Network, which is comprised of over 1,600 advisors and staff and 200-plus offices across the globe. The SV & Stone team consists of experienced commercial real estate advisors in the heart of the Bluegrass. SVN provides commercial real estate services to large corporations, middle market businesses, and individual entrepreneurial investors. Serving the greater Lexington area, SVN offers advisory services for sales, leasing, management, and development of commercial properties locally, regionally, and nationally. With transaction volume of over $400 million, the advisors at SVN Stone Commercial Real Estate have vast experience and deep understanding of all aspects of commercial real estate.
Man, I can only imagine. So we're sitting in the year 2024, how you've probably changed as a leader from 1995. Is that what it said? 1995 what are maybe some of the biggest lessons? And we're going to get into like the nitty gritty of deals you've been a part of and the way that the city's changed and all those things. But just from a leadership perspective, what are some of the biggest takeaways you've had just as a leader of an organization that size and trying to get people excited about working for Central Bank and being a part of the community?
Well, we encourage all of our employees to be involved in the community, and we ask them to pick out some charity that they have a passion for. And we say, we'd like for you to get involved in that. We'll support that. I think we support throughout our market where we serve over 500 charities. And it's a blessing because Joan lets us do that. And so we really encourage our people to get involved and get involved with our customers and their relationships with those customers. And it's worked fine for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's a great answer. 1995 to today, there's been a lot of change, but I would say 1978 to 2024, there's even more change. I think for me, just to give you an example, I'm 27, so the year after you became the president of Central Bank, I was born. So I haven't seen nearly the amount of life that you have. So I have maybe a limited scope of the financial industry through my time in real estate, which is minuscule compared to your time. What are some of the big, just large events that have happened that have changed banking from the handshake agreement to today? And how have you seen that like directly affect the consumer? Because we all talk about rates and things like that. We tend to kind of focus on that, but there's more. There's regulation and whatnot. So what are some of those examples that you kind of mentioned a little bit earlier?
Well, 2007, 2008, when the recession hit, that was pretty tough. It was pretty tough on real estate and developers, builders. It affected everybody, the retail side of it. And we looked at every one of our customers and said, what can we do to help you? What can we do to get you through this? And truthfully, we didn't lose much money because we worked with them. And the good thing about it, we've got a good reputation with our regulators. We do what we say we do. And if we tell them we're going to do something, we can't do it, we call them and tell them we can't do it. And we build up a good relationship. So if we have to do something that's not within the regulation, I pick up the phone and I call them. And I call my owner and my board and say, here's something we need to try to do. And that's what we do. And they usually go along with that. And then when the pandemic hit, nobody's ever faced that. They shut everything down, especially the entertainment, hotel, restaurants. And I called my owner, Joan, and I said, look, I don't know what we're going to do. I said, I have no idea. I've never managed to do something like this. But I said, we got to make sure we take care of our customer and our employees. And we never did shut the bank down. We didn't have let people nobody work remote from home or wherever. But what we did, we took our retail side and we let half of them come in 1 week and work, and the next week we'd let the other, and we paid them. But in case the breakout happened, we had to have staff to take care of our customer. So we stayed completely open. But I called the regulators after talking to the board and the owner. I said, and Joan, I said, look, we got to do some crazy stuff. We can't waive 90 days payments or 60 days payments or 120-day payments. And when the thing starts coming back, we said, well, you got to pay all this back at one time. We got to add that to the back of their loan. And the regulators worked with us on that. And we did not lose anything. We didn't lose any customer because we worked with them. And being a community bank and locally owned, I can do that. And that's what makes my job so pleasant and so rewarding.
Yeah, and just for distinction purposes, can you talk a little bit about, so I think it's kind of hard for just the general consumer to understand like what a community bank is versus, a national or regional bank. What are some of the differences? Because when you see central banks like all over our downtowns, you're like, wow, they must be the biggest bank in the world. But when you think about the difference between a bank the size of Central versus, like a large national bank, what does that give you the ability to do when you're talking about what Central Bank can do versus other banks?
Well, let me preface this before I say anything, because I know all the market presidents here with these bigger, larger banks, and every one of them are great people. They try their best to do what's right, and they do. But where I sit today, I've got a community bank. I've got the local decision making right here. My owners, Joan, and my board, and my 500 employees are here. And we can make decisions and go on in the snap of the finger. The larger banks can't do that. And they just can't do it. And it's nothing against the president or their employees here. They just can't do it. But we've got we work close with all of them, and I'll continue to work close with them. And I've got good relationships with every one of them.
And when, is there a distinction behind the size of a bank to be considered community versus regional versus national?
Yeah, I don't know how you describe ours. Our bank is $3.6 billion, and when I took over and the Jane and Joan got control of the bank, we were $350 million, and we didn't sell any stock we grew our bank out of retained earnings. So they call them regional, some regional banks, some larger banks. A regional bank would be like Fifth Third, somebody like that. The larger banks would be like U.S. Bank, PNC, Chase, and all those. But I don't pay any attention what the differences are.
Yeah.
We just go out and take care of our customer.
Craftsman Contractors is Central Kentucky's one-stop shop for roofing, windows, siding, and gutters. CraftsmanContractors.com/contact us will get you straight to the form you need so that their team will get in touch about your project. Or just text Steven at 859-246-0108. When they finish your project of windows, siding, gutters, or roofing, you'll see what they mean when they say we build with integrity.
Yeah, wow, that's pretty cool. Man, I could ask you about a million questions. You've been around Lexington for a really long time. I first want to start with, I assume the city's changed a little bit since 1978. We're sitting downtown on South Limestone right now. What are just some of the things that you've noticed that have changed about the city? You're not only involved in the finance side of the city, but you're very involved in the community. When I looked up a lot of your information before, it was actually funny. I had ChatGPT give me a prompt on what your bio was, which is pretty wild. First time I've done that. But a third of your bio was how involved you are in the community. And there was a lot of stories that could go behind that. Maybe we'll touch a couple of those. How have you seen just the city change over time, or what are some just distinguishable changes that have occurred in Lexington since 1978?
Well, a lot of what I've seen change, and it's changed sometimes not in a good way, but when you look and when all the marches was going on, all the riots were going on in other parts of this country, we have a great chief of police and Chief Weathers, and you didn't see that here in Fayette County. And I think a lot of people, well, it's not safe, but I think it's safe. You can't control a lot of the things that happen, these shootings. You can't control that, but they're on top of it. And I think the biggest thing they've done is when they set all these cameras up, because they've arrested a lot of people from these cameras, and we've got all of ours hooked up to them. And I think that's one of the most important things they could have done, because they catch a lot of people because of that. And his leadership and our Metro Police Department is great, and I think they're trying hard, but it's hard to get policemen to new policemen. It's just hard to get them, and I hope that changes.
And then I should have looked it up before, but I know that around the time of 1978, call it the 80s, is really when Lexington had a boom in population.
Did.
And you got to be a part of that. Was that a pretty fun ride with Central Bank as people started moving here and buying houses and buying property? Did you see much change there from the lending industry?
It was wonderful. And then today we don't have houses. We don't have land to build houses. And I'll be the first person to tell you, I don't want to hurt a blade of grass of a horse farm. I would never be in favor of that. And most people are not. Some people would take it and go on, but not me. But we've got to convince people we need we need land for expansion because we're not growing here. And I'll tell you, my bank is growing in other areas, not Lexington. And you can ask any bank, they're not growing either because we just don't have the land. And now the council, give them credit, they I think it's 14-1 to expand the urban service to about 5,000 acres. And now some people saying cut it back to 2,500 and all that. But they need to expand it, and they need to expand it in the proper way. But the worst thing we need right now is affordable housing. And people getting out of college cannot afford a house. They can't do it. So it's got completely out of control. And you got a lot of apartments here, but they're not building no equity. They're not building up any wealth. So we've got to change that. And but I think our city council has done a good job with this. And now it's in planning and zoning. I just hope the mayor takes a leadership position on this and says, hey, here's what we got to do to move this city forward. If we don't do that, we're not going to grow.
I can't remember what guest it was. We've done a few now, but I'll think about this. It might have even been Ross who used to or does co-host the podcast with me, and was very sad he couldn't be here. You all have met before, and you made a pretty big impact on him. But I think he was the one that said, if you're not growing, you're dying in some capacity, which I would agree with. So can kind of be a scary reality. We talk about on this podcast at length about the urban services boundary, and I'm really interested to see what's going to happen with it, but definitely seems like a good move for the city in general. Okay, so in terms of expansion and development, I think that just leads us into maybe some of the projects that you've been a part of. You've been in the industry a really long time. We were just talking about some of the loans that you've been able to produce over the years before we got on camera. But what are some of, if you had a listener that could look at a building in Lexington and say, that's pretty cool that he was part of that. Are there any projects or fun projects or stories that jump off the page to you that you like to talk about?
Well, the one I talk about all the time is Ball Homes, Don Ball and Myra. They knew what affordable housing was, and they were a leader in that. And now they're building in Tennessee and other places. And you couldn't find no better family. Not only did they understand affordable housing, they're givers as well. Look what they've done for this city. And not only them, but a lot of developers and builders have done that. But they stick out because they've done so much. And they were so engaged in it. And Ray, which passed away, and Ray was a good friend of mine. And Ray carried on what his mom and dad, now Lisa and Mike's carrying it on. And Linda and Ray's son, and they're doing well. But we miss people like that. We miss people like Don and Ray Ball, and because they really cared about this community.
What I maybe hear about that is a development working with the Balls is working with a developer that cared about the city in some capacity, which is kind of a unique thing about Lexington of, we work in some of these cities on the real estate side sometimes that there's just a ton of outside capital that comes and does the more notable projects in a city. But it has been pretty neat through this platform. We've been able to interview people like yourself and people like Dudley and Phil and all the people that are Lexington through and through and are actually, you look downtown at the Central Bank building or Big Blue building or City Center or any of those buildings, you're like, oh, the person that is sitting in it is actually the person who built it rather than just outside capital from New York or Nashville or something. That's kind of an interesting thing about our market. Any other stories that you think would be interesting for a listener?
Well, look what Madden has done. Ray Ball's done. Not Ray, what he did before he passed away. Dennis Anderson. You got the Webbs and the Greers. Look what they've done downtown. There are just a lot of things that happened that a lot of people didn't think could happen.
DevelopLex is also sponsored by Community Trust Bank. Hi there, this is Cam Dacey, Commercial Loan Officer at Community Trust Bank and avid DevelopLex and Middle Tech podcast listener. Community Trust offers a wide variety of home loans, commercial loans, and small business loans to suit your financial needs, as well as mobile banking, internet banking, and bill pay. Their friendly and professional staff would love to assist you at one of their 6 Lexington locations. Community Trust Bank is committed to building communities built on trust. Member FDIC, equal housing lender, subject to credit approval.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you are talking to a 22-year-old that walks in to apply to be a teller at Central Bank. They just got out of college, and they walk into your office. I don't know if your office is the one they go into first day, but they walk into your office and you all just hired them, and they're wanting advice from you on what trajectory they should be thinking about right now. What advice would you give them?
Well, I have lunch with every employee we hire, and I tell them there are 3 things get you fired. You use drugs, you lie, and you steal. You're not going to work here because we're a trusted organization, and we can't have that. But I tell them 2 things that my dad told me. The day you quit learning is the day you die. And if you always tell the truth, you never have to remember. And then I go farther with that, and I said, if you make a mistake, admit your mistake. You learn by your mistakes. I make them every day. And I said, don't ever say, oh, he did it or she did it. If you made it, say, I made that mistake. And I said, we can sit down and work through that process. And I said, a lot of people in this bank is at the age to retire. So there's a lot of opportunity here, but you got to be patient. You can't say, I'm going to come in, sit in Luther Deaton's chair today and come in and out of college. It's not going to happen. So just be patient, work hard, and do what's right, and don't get in those little gossip groups. Just do what's right and do your job, and good things will happen.
Yeah. Is that are those all qualities that you would say?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That got you to where you're at today. Okay.
I tell them, hard work, honesty, integrity will get you everywhere.
In a lot of doors.
Yes, it will.
I would love to ask you about some of the organizations that you've been a part of while around the city. Obviously, Central Bank and you yourself are a part of a lot of things. What are some of the organizations that you feel most passionate about in the city of Lexington that you've given a lot of time to? There's countless. I'm not kidding. When ChatGPT told me about Luther Deaton, it talked about a lot. But what would be a few of the things that you like to do?
One of them is UK Healthcare, the Marquis Cancer Center. You know, our bank, my owner, Joan, allowed us to give them $10 million on that cancer center. And that's one thing. The other thing is the Chamber of Commerce. That a lot of people says, what does Chamber of Commerce do? Well, you make a lot of contact there, and you learn a lot as well. If you sit there and listen to a lot of stuff, you learn a lot. But if you talk all the time, you can't learn anything. So that's 2 things. And then, the homeless is a big part. And I don't know what the answer is to that. But I will tell you this. We got a gentleman that Shane Ensminger, that his dad worked for his dad, and he runs our security department. These people come in from out of state, and they bring they steal these checks, and they say, you got a driver's license? Yes. You go cash this check and we'll give you $100. Well, they end up in jail. Those people go out. So Shane Ensminger and Chief Weathers got together, and they went and tried to meet all these homeless people. Said, you take that check, you come to us, we'll give you the same money, we'll catch these people. And they're catching a lot of people doing that. So that's one thing that's really working. And I enjoy them, watching them get these crooks off the street, because it's a nightmare. It's absolutely a nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the Hope Center's an organization. I'm very involved in that. It's another one that's just unbelievable.
Yeah, there's some pretty amazing organizations in Lexington for sure that you've given your time to. Okay, I would want to shift into, you've been on this earth for a number of years, and I'm sure have learned quite a few lessons along the way. What do you think, if you had to, again, maybe talk to that 22-year-old about just some of the lessons that you can probably only experience through life, but that maybe you would try to articulate to that person? What are some of the biggest lessons that you learned along the way?
One big lesson in the lending side of it, that's where I started as a teller and then moved into the lending. I made this loan one time. It was $25,000. And I didn't go out and visit the people. I just made them the loan. And the gentleman that was on loan review, he said, "Hey, Deaton," said, "is that a good loan?" I said, "Yes, sir. It's a good loan." He said, "Oh, that's good." He said, "Let's go to lunch tomorrow." I said, "Okay." So we got in his car and he drove me, and we went, and I said, "What's this?" He said, "This is where you made this $25,000 loan." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yep." He said, "You're going to have a loss." He said, "Let's go in and look." I got sick in my stomach. And I made a promise then that I would never loan anybody any money that I didn't go out and touch, feel, and look at their operation and see what kind of manager they were. And that's one of the biggest lessons I learned. That's what I tell young people. Just be patient and learn all the aspects of business. Learn it all. And that's a good part in banking. You see it all. You see it on the medical side. You see it on the business side. You see it on the real estate side. You see it all. You get to see it all, and you get to learn a lot. And that's the most important thing. You're learning all the time.
Steve Pulliam, your friend Steve Pulliam, my friend Steve Pulliam, always says the line, "See the people, see the property." I am very guilty of being a Google Maps guy and thinking that I can understand a piece of real estate or a business or something from Google Maps and Google reviews, because I'm sometimes too lazy to go drive 15 minutes to go look at a corner. But until you actually walk in and see a business or see a property, it's really hard to see what that is, or the success of it.
One of my directors that's on loan committee, and I got three good directors on that loan committee, but Mike Ritchie and Mike Foley and Paul Sullivan. And when you bring a loan in there, Paul Sullivan, "Have you seen this? Y'all visit this property?" We better say yes, and we better have.
What have, just speaking of your time as just a pure commercial lender, was it commercial?
Yeah.
Solely?
I did both.
Okay.
Commercial real estate and commercial.
What are some of the things you would look for as a commercial lender in a property?
Well, number one, the value of it. And the second thing is what they have proposals, will it work? And is it laid out the right way? And can they make this happen? And you got to do a lot of digging. You just can't look at it and say, "This is going to happen." You got to go out and look at it, just like you got to look what the traffic count is, all that stuff. And we take all that in consideration. It's just not, you just don't make the loan and say, "Oh, it's going to be all right." You got to dig deep in the weeds to get the answers.
Absolutely. Something about Lexington, and I'm assuming that you would agree, but something about Lexington that's super unique compared to a lot of the markets around here in the states surrounding, are that Lexington is, I think our population's probably around 340,000. But I would almost consider us like a very large college town. The university has been a huge impact. Central Bank in particular has been very involved in the university. What would you say is the reasoning for Central Bank just aligning themselves so much with the University of Kentucky, and how has the University of Kentucky made an impact on the city of Lexington?
Well, it's a university for the whole Commonwealth. Everybody from all walks of every county in this state comes to the University of Kentucky. And not only that, it's got health care is good. It's a teaching hospital. But I tell other people, we've got the best in this city. You got good education, and you got good health care. You got several good hospitals here, and great colleges. You got Transylvania. You got you got Georgetown. You got Berea. You got Eastern, Moorhead. You got all these colleges. We're sitting right in a pot of gold, and we just have to make sure we use those properly.
A big thing that happened in the recent few years that has to do with the University of Kentucky is the changing of the name of our beloved basketball teams. I guess it's not just the basketball team. Rupp Arena in general. Mm-hmm. It's now the Central Bank Center. Yeah. Has that been a big impact for Central Bank?
It's been bigger than I thought it would be, but the funniest thing about that, when they come to me and they made a proposal, and I sat down with my owner and I said, here's what they want us to do. And she said, why do you want to do this? I said, well, I think it'd be a great thing for our city. And the founder of our bank, Mr. Kincaid, I didn't know he was involved with Jim Host and them when convention center was built downtown. And she said, what do you want to do? I said, well, I think we need to do it. She said, okay, but she said, they're not taking Rupp Arena off there, are they? And I said, well, no, I don't think so. She said, if they are, we're not going to be a part of it. It's got to stay. And she said, I want you to I got with Chip Ruff and his family, and then I got with Mitch Barnhart, and we all got in a meeting. And I said, look, we got to make this where Rupp Arena stays on. And that's how it stayed.
That's pretty cool. It's preserve the integrity while also just aligning yourself with very cool. Frederick is a good friend of mine, a listener of DevelopLex, which is Chip's son.
Rupp.
Yeah, Chip's son. Okay, well, let's maybe talk about just a couple forward-facing questions about Lexington specifically, if you could. How do you feel like Lexington, you've been around the city for a very long time, how do you feel like Lexington can continue to change for the better? That can be a question related to, and I have to give a shout out to Brian McCarty and Bruce Drake. They were our connection today. We ended up talking about Kentucky basketball and football, so that's fine too. But you can talk about anything you want. How do you feel like the city of Lexington can continue to change for the better?
Well, basketball and football, and now baseball.
Yeah.
But Mr. Barnhart's done a good job. He's really made these programs something special. And when you got Mark Pope, Calipari was a good guy. He did so much for this unit. He did so much for the state. If they was in need, regardless of where he's at, he was there. And Mark Pope, I think, will do the same thing. And Coach Stoops is unbelievable. And Minjo, I know him, and the new ladies basketball coach, they come in, Coach Brooks, he's going to do a great job. So that's what makes Lexington special, because you got all that going on. Then you got the soccer fields going on I-75 out here with Bill Shively, and what a great guy he is. And what he's doing out there is just unbelievable. It is absolutely unbelievable. And the most important thing I'm really pleased about is the youth soccer he's got going out there. It's going to do a lot for these young people. And what people don't understand, if we create things like that, we go keep them off the streets. We go keep them out of trouble. And I think that's how we got to look to make this city better.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned something that I've felt more passionate about the more we've talked on DevelopLex is retaining people and building things like just really good sports programs at the University of Kentucky, youth programs, things like that is part of the way that you retain people. Jobs post-graduation is another way that you retain people. But I do think that there's just a lot going on in the city right now, like you said, that there's just overall good for the city. I would say, kind of a ending question for us. What do you feel most excited about for the future of Lexington? That can be something like a project that's going on. That can be, again, our basketball team's record. That can be anything. But what do you feel the most excited for the city of Lexington right now?
The most exciting thing, I think, is a Transylvania baseball field that's going. We got 5 affordable housing developers. You got AU Associates. You got Winterwood. You got Urban League. You got Lexington Housing, and you got Habitat. All 5 of them are going to take that 12 acres and divide it up and build affordable housing there. And how can you get 4-5 developers like that together that'll sit down and agree to do that? We talked to the mayor a long time ago. We've been talking about affordable housing. How can we do it? And this property came up at Transylvania, and I called Buddy Cowgill, and I said, Buddy, what about this property? He said, it's for sale. And I went to my board, and I said, look, we can't let this get away. We got to do something with it. So my board authorized me to sign a contract to purchase that property. So we got a group of banks together, and I said, guys, I'm already in the water. And we had traditional community trust, stockyards, and Republic Bank, and me. 5 of us got together, and we split that up, and we bought that property, and we put it in a development, and that's capital's going to keep going. We're not going to get paid back on it. We're going to keep just putting in different projects, and we hope that this will be. We flew all the developers to see the HUD secretary with Andy Barr and Mitch McConnell, and she was real excited about it. The mayor went with us, and this thing could really be big. It could be one of the biggest things that Lexington's ever done, I think. Wow. Not because I'm involved in it, but this could be really something.
Yeah, our office, some of the brokers from our office, specifically Matt, Justin, and Harrison, got to represent the seller side in that one, and they were just really excited to see it get done. Do you feel like that, the collaboration that was involved in that, do you feel like that would be a sustainable way to solve some of those housing problems in the city?
I do. And that's the only way. You got to get public and private partnerships together. And the mayor's behind it. And Governor Beshear, we went and talked to him about it. He was all excited about it. Speaker Osborne and President Stivers, they jumped on it, and they put $10 million in the budget for help us with the infrastructure. So, but when you bring people together like that, when all of them are together in a room, and that's unusual, especially in the political world. And I wish the political side too, I wish they would come together, could sit down in the room and talk about things. But it seemed like they can't do that, and I don't know why. But I've got a good relationship on both sides of the aisle. I try to take good projects to them, talk about things that we can make things better, and they usually work with me, every one of them. And I got to really give President Stivers and Speaker Osborne a lot of credit, and Amanda Bledsoe. She jumped right on it, and she said, "This is something we need to do." So it got done.
Yeah, to me as a
I just hope we can get through zoning and all that.
yeah, that's.
I think we can. I think we get it done.
To me, it feels like that when we're talking about some of the urban service boundary and just issues that our city's facing, it feels like public-private partnerships are really a huge way forward in that, and people like you being involved that kind of are on both sides of the aisle as it relates to public and private, or have the ability to kind of bridge that gap, seem like big key decision or key players in that formula. So, well, thank you for your work in that. Yeah, I can't say enough. We've been doing this podcast for almost 3 years now. Your name has been, since day one, somebody that when we talk about the way that Lexington develops, not just real estate, but the way that Lexington develops, and some of the wrinkles that are a part of that development, and meaning the people that are part of that development, you get thrown around as a massive part of that. So we really do thank you. We do this podcast so that, people can get excited about the city of Lexington, and you've been a huge part of that. So thank you.
Well, the other thing, I've talked to Ballard Cassidy, who's the president of the Kentucky Bankers Association, and we go see how this works here with the Transylvania property, and we go try to take this statewide. And wherever this is needed, we'll do. And whether it be East Kentucky, where my hometown is, and I'd love to do something for those people in West Kentucky, wherever it's needed, that we can help with affordable housing.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Luther, thank you for coming on DevelopLex. We really appreciate having you on.
Well, I appreciate you, and I couldn't be what I'm at today with Jane and Joan Kincaid took a chance on me in 1995, and I couldn't have done any of this. And I couldn't have been what I'm at today without them two ladies in my board and my 510 team members.
Absolutely. That makes sense. It's a tribe that keeps it all going. Awesome. Thanks, Luther.